Hey everybody, I'm Tom Bilyeu, and I'm today's Man of the Hour.
I am only hopeful that watching this and listening right now, you are going to learn a little bit about health, work ethic, maybe some balance between professional and personal life, and all things Tom Bilyeu. And it starts right now. Tom Bilyeu, thank you for being today's Man of the Hour.
Thanks for having me on, man. I'm excited to be here.
I'm really excited to have you. And you couldn't have said it more eloquently. I said, you know what, guys? We're going to have Tom start the show by saying he's today's Man of the Hour. So hopefully that got you guys tickled on the inside just as much as it did our team. Tom, I got to start not only by welcoming you, but letting you know that your long form show, Impact Theory, has been something I've had my eyeballs on since I was a junior in college, before I even thought to get into media in the hosting world too. I was like,
That's so crazy.
I said, Tom, you're someone I looked at and now come full circle for someone like me. And what we're trying to do with this show particularly is to bring guys like you on to share your story, which you do a lot of, but I feel like you also do so much of the educating and the motivating and more or less all of the inspirational things that you're giving people constantly. And so I want the next hour to really be you, where the journey's been between Quest and the Impact Theory and, you know, working with your wife. And we're going to hit on all of these points, but we're also still in a freaking pandemic. So I want to also ask you, first and foremost, where are you mentally and with work? And I know you've been working out of the house for quite some time now, as all of us, but how are you?
Yeah, I mean, from that standpoint, I'm doing just fine. I'm very worried about a lot of people. I think that this is going to hit the economy like a sledgehammer, and I don't think people yet understand just how dramatic the effect is going to be. And Lord knows, I hope I'm wrong about that, but I don't think so.
Yeah.
But you know, my wife and I are very fortunate. We've obviously talked a lot about like, hey, this could have happened at any period in our lives, and the fact that it's happening now, it is very easy for us to do this.
Mm,
If it had happened 20 years ago when we first got together,
mm,
you know, and we were dirt poor, living in a tiny apartment with a job that almost certainly would have vanished in the first month or two of the pandemic, that would have been a very different situation.
mm.
So, you know, unfortunately, there is a huge amount of luck in life. And, you know, we just happened to catch a lucky break on this one. So, um, where my mind goes is to what I can do to be useful to the people for whom this is that nightmare scenario. And that's what we think a lot about.
Mm. You both. I mean, for so long, the both of you have been building such a brand around Impact Theory and all the branches and arms with it too. I can only imagine that's like that's got to be a good place for you to be in right now, especially when everybody else is losing their jobs and still on unemployment and figuring out what their next job might be and picking their business back up after it shut down for an entire year or what have you. So you guys are in a good place at least, and that's really good to hear. Before we get in, and we're going to break everything down, Tom, I'm not kidding when I say when I was building your run a show and thinking about all the things we talk about today, something I do want to get into is kind of that advice piece of what entrepreneurs, people who have companies, people who've lost a job. So anybody listening and watching right now, we'll get into a lot of that. But I was going to bring up the fact that your birthday is March 30th. I have that right. And
Yes,
we're
you do
both
indeed.
we're both Aries. And I said, you know what? If anything, that's probably the real reason you said yes to coming on the show. You were going to have another Aries interview you. Do you know anything about the zodiac sign? Do you study it?
Not in the slightest. I put exactly 0% faith
So wait, I
in
did for
that,
a
but
long time. And I said, this might be a good time to kind of check on what Aries really are. So Aries is a passionate, motivated, confident leader who builds community with their cheerful disposition and relentless determination. Uncomplicated and direct in their approach, right? They often get frustrated by exhaustive details and unnecessary nuances. Correct for Tom Bilyeu?
that is correct for me. Now, do you know what cold reading is?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically horoscopes are essentially cold reading. You say a bunch of things that people want to be associated with. So they're like, yeah, that's exactly me. Um, Unfortunately, if you were to line up every human that was an Aries, there is no way that they're all going to be exactly the same. Like, let me mess with a woman's prenatal hormones, and I don't care when that child is born, I will derail their cognitive development. So if you want to like really start grouping people, start grouping them by What did their parents eat, or
Mm,
specifically the mother eat during gestation? That probably has a very meaningful impact. What was the parents' attachment style? That you could probably group
oh,
people
I'd
by
say,
that.
yeah.
But when they're born, because then it's going to be different. Because the only thing you could be predicting is like, God, what weather, barometric patterns, vitamin D levels. And so now you're talking about, okay, that time of year, but in what part of the world, right?
Right.
Because March is very different in Australia than it is in Tacoma, Washington, where my mother was living when I was born. So I'm sure you didn't plan to derail on that, but that's sort of my take on that stuff.
Do you see we put something in front of Tom Bilyeu, and this is exactly what we get. But the reason I bring it up is because I noticed the words passionate, motivated, and confident. And those are things that are usually accumulated over time as you start building something, not just for yourself, like a quest or an impact theory, but you as a person. I always say to people, it's like you're sidelining both things, your career and then who you are building while in that career. And for someone like you, especially a lot of entrepreneurs nowadays, a lot of times it's building a lifestyle within your career so that you're not worried too much about the 9 to 5 and all of that. But did you think the child version of Tom, especially the one that you've often referred to as the overweight Tom, in which you grew up, did you think you would have been where you are now? Because I kind of want to start there in terms of your vision, and you're such a visionary anyway. But I could imagine what would the young Tom think right now?
When I was a kid, I knew I would be successful. So if you had asked, my family used to make fun of me because I said, look, when I get older, I'm going to be rich. You just watch. I'm going to be rich. I'm going to be rich. And whenever somebody says like, oh my God, could you imagine? I'm like, yes, not only could I imagine, I obsessively imagined my life being like this.
Mm,
Now, the problem is in my early to mid 20s, I was terrified.
mm,
I had no idea how to make my dreams come true. I felt lost. I felt hopeless. I was broke. I had no idea how to make my dreams into a reality. And so, yes, when I was a kid, I had these big visions,
mm,
but it really quickly showed me that there's a big difference between ambition, which is the dream, drive, which is the willingness to do all the hard things you're going to have to do to develop the skill set that you're going to need to actually execute and make your dreams real. But the execution is the only part that matters. Like your thoughts, quite frankly, are totally irrelevant. It is only what you do that matters. Now, the
mm,
catch, of course, is that what you do is a direct result of what you think. So, in that sense, your thoughts are all that matters. But if your thoughts never translate into action, you've got nothing, which is
mm,
why I always tell people The Secret, the movie, which was huge, like, God, 15 years ago, 16 years ago. Um, that is half BS and half real. The half that's real is that you have to believe it in order to align your behaviors. The half that's BS is if you don't do something, you can sit there and wish for $1 million all day,
mm,
but it isn't going to happen. Like it's not going to fall in your lap. So getting people to understand, all right, cool, you've got the ambition. You maybe even have a willingness to believe it's possible, which is huge. It's so important.
mhm,
But dude, if you don't show up every day and try to acquire skills like your life depends on it,
mm,
then it's never going to happen. Like the concept of escape velocity. If somebody's trying to do something in their life, they need to get very familiar with that notion that
mm,
you have to, it's not, you can't even just move really fast. You have to move so fast that you overcome the inertia, or, where the term comes from is if you're trying to launch something,
mm.
excuse me, into outer space, it has to be traveling fast enough that it can escape the gravitational pull of the earth. So that's really what it's like. And there's a reason it's hard to get a rocket beyond Earth's orbit. Like it takes so much energy, man. And so that's the gap, right? So as a kid, yes, I could envision it, but oh God, my life has been about that journey of actually generating escape velocity.
Mm. And you bring up skills. So in order to do things, obviously it takes some practice, some studying, some actual like tangible things that you need. And oftentimes I think people overthink what they might need to be doing. For example, if you want to be a producer, okay, figure out how to edit videos, right? Or figure out how to book some talent, or, whatever those skills are. When you were in your early 20s, for example, and you kind of were starting to put things into motion, um, Did it ever cross your mind that you needed to just buckle down and focus only on skills, or were you kind of stumbling over your thoughts at the same time? Because I often think in our 20s, I'm 24, and a lot of times I'm still stumbling on thoughts like, all right, well, I'm interviewing Tom Bilyeu right now on this show. Yeah, but also like, no, let's just do the damn thing too at the same time. So where are your thoughts there?
So now, yes, I know that the way of things is such that you aren't going to know what you're doing. That's absolutely fine. That's how the human mind learns. You try something, you're never going to be able to think your way to expertise. So you're going to try it, you're going to be bad at it, you're going to fail. But the way that the human mind works, the average human is designed to learn and grow. So you don't need to be special, right? That's just species have to choose paths. So a horse is chosen to preload everything. So when a horse is born, it can do all the things that a horse can do 20 minutes out of the gate. A human, literally, your brain doesn't stop developing for 25 years. So it's really a wildly different strategy than what the vast majority of the other species have chosen, which is we say, hey, your environment, your culture are incredibly important, and we're going to let knowledge stack. So you don't have to reinvent things every generation the way that a horse would, right? So um, that difference is just staggeringly important to understand, because when you understand, oh, okay, cool, I get it from an architectural level, the way that my brain is designed is for
Mm,
me to go stumble out, make a fool of myself, try something, fail, and then have real world understanding of, oh God, okay, yeah, wow, I could not have anticipated this element of what I'm trying to get good at
yeah.
while I was sitting at home reading about it. But now that I'm out here, I'm learning a lot faster. And once you embrace that, then you can get over the sense of, I don't want to fail. And if I put myself out there and I give myself a deadline and all that, I'll know that I'll failed, and that's going to hurt my self-esteem. And I want to protect myself from that. You just go, man, the whole goal right now is to go out, take action as fast as I can, to fail quickly, in the sense of you're not trying to fail, but you're doing a thing that you don't yet know how to do,
Mm,
knowing that, every time you, let's say you're skateboarding, every time you fall off your skateboard, you're a little bit closer to figuring out how to stay on your skateboard.
mm,
Same is true in business, same is true in art, anything. And once you really internalize that, and you're not just saying it because, okay, Tom said it and I'll repeat it. Now, yeah, I guess it's true. It's like really, really, truly in your core, you're like, this is how the human mind works. It's what I call the physics of being human.
mm,
It is irreducible. That's the
yeah,
way it works. That is the process. The process cannot be gotten around. You must do the thing, which if you haven't done the thing, you will suck at. So you must do things you suck at to get good in order to move forward. The vast majority of humanity will never do it. So the people that win are the people that are like, I don't care if I look stupid. I don't care if I embarrass myself. I don't care if I make really gnarly mistakes.
mm,
Because on a long enough timeline, by being willing to do that, I'm getting all of this information, and that information pays off in dividends. And
yeah,
getting people to understand that is like my life's mission. And it drives me crazy
I'd
how
say.
hard it is to get people to go, what you build your self-esteem around matters. And if you're
Yeah.
building your self-esteem around being good at something the first time you try it, you're fucked.
Mm. Yeah, because self-esteem, I think, has a lot to do with the fact in getting started. And you're right. I think there's a level of ego people aren't willing to tiptoe on in terms of like actually building something or doing something. You mentioned skateboarding. If you're right. If you want to learn how to skateboard, you just got to jump on a skateboard and go down the sidewalk, and that's really all it takes. You mentioned mindset too. We'll get to the something you used to always refer to, which was mastering the mindset. I'm curious to get your thoughts on just how to even think of your mind as maybe an opposite part of you, as opposed to, I feel like everybody knows the mind runs the entirety of your body and your life, and it starts in your noggin. My dad used to say that, like, oh, you got a hard noggin, dude. You also got a big ass head. But like, and I always tell my dad, I'm like, yeah, but at the same time, if you understand what's happening up here, you can also really take care of your body, know, why you're thinking certain thoughts, how to avoid and pivot around certain thoughts too. So that was the young Tom, at least. I want to talk about the Tom in 2010. That was the co-founder of Quest Nutrition. I don't know how you did it, and we're about to find the hell out how you did it. And I remember you saying that the mission was to end metabolic disease. And when you have a strong enough mission like that, to not only empower your upbringing and your family and what you guys pretty much helping other people understand that when you are overweight, there's ways to overcome that, overcoming the overweight. But there's also many missions I'm sure you had with Quest Nutrition, and much more to it. But gosh, how did you get started? And when you thought about launching something like a Quest Nutrition, You know, what were some of your first thoughts and actions?
Okay, so the story of Quest, like most things, is actually pretty messy, and it starts somewhere you would never imagine. So, back at the company we were running before that, a company called Awareness Technologies, I've been chasing money for about 8 years. I was profoundly unhappy. And so on paper, I was worth about $2 million. Now, most people don't understand finance, and so they don't get the difference between paper money and like money in the bank. But anyway, on paper, I was worth about $2 million, and I was really unhappy. And so I said to my wife, look, I know I promised I would make you rich, but oh my God, I need to step backwards for a minute because this is so miserable. I just can't keep doing this.
Mm,
And she was totally on board. And I went in to my partners and I quit. And I said, look, I need to go do something that makes me feel alive. Here's your equity back. So I gave them back about $2 million in equity. And I said, I'm moving to Greece and I'm going to go right. And that's that. I'm going to feel alive again. And they were like, okay. And I'm driving home. They call me back and they're like, look, man, come out to dinner with us. She caught us off guard. Like, give us a minute. So go out to dinner. And they're like, look, we feel the same. What would it look like for us to keep working together? What would we have to
mm,
change? And so I said, okay, well, we would need to build something that we're passionate about. We would need to, I didn't use the word authentic because that wasn't a word that was like in popular culture at the time. But I was like, I want to be myself. I want to be who I am. Like, I don't want to be a slick marketer. I want to like really tell the world what we're about, what we stand for. Like
mm,
us behind the scenes, I think is so interesting. And like,
yeah.
I think we have a lot to offer our employees. I think we could do some cool marketing. And I said, look, there's this guy, Kevin Kelly. He's got this whole idea of 1,000 true fans. So whatever the next company is, like, it's going to be all about social media. And one of my partners was obsessed with nutrition. And you're always, when you have, there were three of us, when you have a group of people like that, you're always thinking, all right, what are they good at? Like, what could we leverage in each other? And so I was getting obsessed with this idea of building community. My other partner was obsessed with nutrition. And the other one was literally an Iowa farm boy. And at the time, if I'm honest, he was just sort of like, hey, cool. If you guys think this is the idea, let's do it. He ends up becoming insanely important.
Mm,
Um, and I thought, okay, I'm into nutrition in as much as I've changed my own life with it.
mhm,
Um, my partner knows like so much about nutrition. I swear he knew more about nutrition at that point than most doctors. It was
mm,
insane. And so I was like, we could really do something here. So I pitched him this idea. We would now call it social media, that didn't exist back then.
mm,
And I said, let's launch that company. Um, do social media. You're going to be studying nutrition, whether we have a company for it or not. So we might
mm,
as well leverage that. Plus, it's a product that you eat. That is, if I can make a recommendation to anybody out there, if you're starting a business where your customer literally eats your product is a good business to be in. And so that was it. And, that develops, over 18 months. We're like doing formulations and stuff, but we still
mm,
have the other company. And we're running the software company by day and then making protein bars nights and weekends. We did that for
mm,
quite a while. And then finally, we sold that company, but we were all locked up on employment contracts. And the new CEO, the guy that bought the company, he and I didn't agree on what marketing was. And so, in one of the sort of greatest call your shot moments ever, I said, "Hey, since you think I'm crazy, I think marketing is storytelling. You think it's spreadsheets. Let me leave. Let me out of my employment contract. Let me go do Quest." And so, in a very respectful manner, we transitioned out, and he wished me luck. Um, and as it turns out, marketing is storytelling. And we
yeah.
built $1 billion business, and it was pure insanity. 57,000% growth in the first 3 years alone. 3,000 employees, 300,000 square feet, hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. I mean, it was just bananas. We ended up doing more revenue in a single day than the previous company did annually. It was bananas. So that was how that whole thing started.
That's bananas. I think about the hours you put in, and I always used to hear you talk about putting your head down and just focusing on keeping your eye on the prize. When a lot of times, and you also brought this up too, this idea of pop culture and that term authentic self being it's pop culture right now. A lot of things are. So is clout. So is FOMO. There's a lot. But back when you were starting that, I mean, I wanted to ask you, when you're having to build something while also staying at a tech company, you're working and that's all you're doing. Whereas nowadays, people like to show off their work, or people like to party and celebrate and pop a bottle of champagne if they close a deal. Like, there's a lot to that. I think I would love your insight in, because even someone like myself, we had launched this show and I was like, yeah, but the team is always saying like, we need to celebrate this. Like, yeah, we got Tom, and I was like, yeah, we're not popping the bottle till his episode airs. Like, what are you kidding? And there's a part of being an entrepreneur that I know you have often said, it just takes all of these, like, trial and error, all the hours. Put your head down, get the shit done, and just focus. And when you guys had launched Quest, and even all the hours you put into building it, and building everything around it, where was your headspace? Because obviously, like, social media wasn't as crazy as it is now with TikTok and Instagram and everything. But where was your headspace when staying focused on launching such a business? Now it's $1 billion business.
So I'm really bad at celebrating things, and not because I think it's the right idea. It's just that's my personality.
Mm,
Um, I think it is good, especially for team morale, to like set a milestone, and then when you hit the milestone, to celebrate it. Um, the way my mind works is I know what my mission is. I've set a mission so big that I could spend my entire life and not be able to fully accomplish it. So every time we hit, one milestone, it's like by the time we're sort of 80% of the way there, I've already set the next milestone. And so hitting that
mm,
milestone has never been very exciting for me.
yeah.
But that's where you have to get to the point where you recognize the difference. It's kind of like in a relationship where you recognize, oh, that's not my love language, but that's the team's love language. And for the team, for you to stop and
Mm,
recognize them and be like, hey, we said we were going to do this and we did it. Like, that is the shit. And you really, man, let me tell you, as a leader, you better get real good at that real fast, because you've got to keep your team galvanized. You've got to keep them excited. You've got to keep them moving at speed in one single direction. And if you act as if everyone is like you, then you could be in for a world of hurt. So with that kind of stuff, we really do make sure that we slow down and celebrate. And I just assign other people to think of that, because it
mm.
just won't occur to me.
Chief of culture is what we call it. Do you ever hear sometimes the I just keep hearing that everywhere. I mean, on a lot of teams there's like a culture committee sometimes, and that's a great thing. Did you ever hear at some point, being the co-founder of Quest and the CEO of Impact Theory, this idea that no one will ever be as passionate about your company as you? And how did that play into your leadership while continuing to build it?
Yeah, I mean, that's just true. So, but I'm not distressed by that or anything. Our goal is to have people retire with us. Now, it's one of
Mm,
those goals that I know is, for the most part, not going to happen. But I figure if I'm aiming for people working for me for 40 years, maybe they work for me for 12 years. And that
mm,
would already be a coup, in a time where people, the average tenure for a millennial is 18 months.
mm,
And hey, just so everybody knows, if I see on your resume that you don't stay anywhere for more than 3 years, I won't even consider you. Like, that's just crazy. I'm not going to put that kind of time and energy
mm,
into somebody that wants to leave. So, we have very different hiring practices, but no one is going to care as much as I'm going to care. I get it. Um, you try to give them things that are meaningful.
mm,
So pay well, obviously, that's something. We give equity to all of our full-time employees. Um, we give profit sharing to all of our full-time employees, both of which default back to the company if you leave. So all we're trying to do is incentivize long-term employment. Um, so we know that beyond the money, beyond the ownership, the thing that they're really going to care about is meaning and purpose. And so we spend a lot of time keeping our staff connected to the people that we serve, because it's all too easy. Like you and I right now, if what you're doing is anything like what I'm doing, I'm sitting in a room all by myself in a house. The only other person in the house is my wife. I never actually see the people. I mean, I used to, right? I'd go and give
yeah.
talks and the people are right there. And but right now, man, it is like you have to go out of your way to like be reminded I'm creating this content because there are actually people that are going to listen to this. And you hope that something you say hits them and it changes the direction of their life, or they suffer a little bit less, or
Mm,
whatever it is that you have to offer. um, if you lose sight of that, even I wouldn't care about my own company. So helping the team stay focused on why we do what we do, on who we're impacting,
Mm,
and really steeping ourselves in the feedback that we get. Um, that's how I address that issue.
mm. And don't stop creating you. I'm talking, like you're right. It's hard when you're at home, and this is the setup we all have now. I remember all of your interviews are double cam setup, and as intense as the video can look, it's still like everybody's at home no matter what. And we are on a Zoom call. In fact, this is the 27th Zoom call, and by all means, that's okay. Because at the end of the day, trying to get you to fly over to New York, I would have had to wait for you to launch a book, right? Or wait for you to go on a press tour and run around Comic-Con again. So it's the beauty of right now is we can have these types of conversations. Is why we've started. It's why you continue to do what you do. It's why I'm obsessed with what you do. Impact theory. I want to talk a little bit more about that, please, because I could only imagine when you were leaving Quest to then start something that not only was a community, which, like you'd said, was a very strong mission of yours, but then to turn into a long form interview talk show that millions of people have seen, if not billions. At this point, Tom, especially since your wife is your co-founder and your right hand, I guess everybody's saying, unless you want to call her your left hand, that's a whole experience where now your world is not just your job, it's not the show, it's the team, it's everything's combined into one bucket. Could imagine that feels like a great place to be. But when you first started, I remember part of the mission was also you making good to a promise that you made to yourself years ago. What was that promise? And then how has it kind of come a little full circle for you as you continue to build impact theory?
My journey to where we are now is the world's most bizarre, circuitous route you can imagine. So I went to film school, thought I would graduate, get out, make movies. And I graduated feeling like a total failure. I had made a senior thesis film. It was a huge deal to get selected. I was one of only 4 people to get chosen to do a senior thesis film. And then I completely screwed it up, and it was terrible. And I was convinced that I had no talent. And just thought, okay, now what am I supposed to do with my life?
Mm,
And it was really crushing, man, really crushing. It was a super dark period in my life. And the way that I crawled out of it, and look, the only way to sort of tell it quickly is to mythologize it ever so slightly. But I will give you the quick version. So graduate film school, no idea how to get in. End up writing a screenplay that gets produced, turned into a film. The film ends up being terrible, and that was really gut wrenching for me.
mm,
And I thought, man, here I am. I've worked towards this moment. I finally have a screenplay being made. There's um, uh, one of the actors that Quentin Tarantino uses in all of his films, whose name I am blanking on right now for some reason, um, is in the movie. And like, oh my God, like this should be the greatest moment of my life.
yep,
And I'm mortified and wishing that I hadn't put my name on it and the whole nine. And I meet these 2 very successful entrepreneurs, and they say, look, Tom, you come into the world with your hand out. If you want to control the art, you have to control the resources. So why don't you come with us and get rich? And I
mm.
thought, that sounds amazing. Let's do that.
Peace out,
So
Phil.
ever since I was a little kid, right? I said, I'm going to be rich. So I'm like, okay, this is perfect. So they hire me as a copywriter, and I think it's going to take me 18 months to help them build this technology company. We'll sell it, we'll exit, and we'll have enough money to make a film. And 18 months turns into 8 years. And I realized, whoa, the struggle is guaranteed, the success is not.
Mm.
So I need to do something that I love in and of the moment. That you already heard that part of the story. I go in and I quit because I was going to go write. And they pulled me back in, like Godfather. And we end up building something, and it's, just massively successful. So I'm like, okay, well, here we are. This is what I said I would always do. I got into
Mm.
business to get rich so I could go build a studio. It's time to build the studio. And so I think my last day at Quest was a Monday, and on Tuesday we started Impact Theory, and take a day off, didn't go on vacation. We just got right down to it.
Mm.
And we're going to build the next Disney, and it's going to take a very long time, and it's going to take a lot of mistakes and a lot of discipline and a lot of focus. And it will be yet another time where I show people, look, I don't know how to build the next Disney yet, but I'll figure it out.
You'll figure it out.
So, we just keep going. And so I remember about 2 years ago when I announced to the team, okay, we're going to start publishing comic books now. And everybody was like, what the fuck? And I said, I warned you we are building the next Disney. So the content that, because even in the company, people think that all we do is interview shows. And so reminding them that no, we make film, TV, comic books, video games. Now we haven't made them all yet, but comics is going to be our first one because we can afford to fail. So we started on comics, and now 2 years later, our first 2 comic books have lived their entire life cycle in the top 10 of Webtoon. If you don't know Webtoon, their reach is insane. I have in fact significantly more views on my comic books than some of my best performing videos. So you can figure anything out. It just is a question of whether you want to put the time and the energy into getting good at it. So, step by step, we'll keep doing that. We're developing more comics now. We've partnered with a major Hollywood management company to help them build out IP for their stable of celebrities. And you just keep doing it, man. One foot in front of the other, just go, go, go. And if you have that, 2 things. 1, you believe that you can figure it out. And 2, you are unimaginably relentless. Like, you've got to be relentless, man. You cannot stop. And if you love that and you're on fire for solving those problems and just showing up day after day after day and going for it, like, I love that shit. I love when people doubt me. I love when people are like, I remember when I first started Inside Quest. First of all, when we started Quest, everybody was like, a protein bar company? Really? Come on. Then I start Inside Quest, the interview show, which of course then becomes Impact Theory. And people are like, Tom, this is played out. It's, the podcast thing's already happened. And my answer was, there's always room for the best. And so I was like, I just have to get better than everybody else. And so, now we've got millions upon millions of followers. We've had almost 500 million views. I mean, it's crazy. So all of this stuff is doable. You've just got to be willing to keep going. So yeah, I mean, at this point I won't say we've made good on the promise, but we are walking the path.
Walking that graceful path. What are your thoughts on taking days off? Since, I mean, Monday to Tuesday, it's not even a 24-hour turnaround. And here you are starting what's going to be, right? You have my word. You have a lot of people's word, but you definitely have my word on this damn podcast about starting the next Disney, or like competing with Disney and then becoming bigger than. But do you like vacation? Do you really not think it's as necessary as I guess most people would when you're working? Do you take days
No,
off?
I love vacation, and my wife is my number one priority. So you need to be very thoughtful about the goals you chase to make sure that every now and then you look around and go, is this really my life? Like, this is amazing. So my advice, so our team has unlimited vacation. Now, we don't have unlimited vacation because I expect you to never work. We have unlimited vacation because I want you to decide when you're going to take a day off, right? So if you wake up on a Tuesday and you're like, I'm fried, man. I am fried. I'm not feeling it. I just want to take a day off. Don't even ask. Make sure your shit is covered and go. Like, do your thing. If you need 2 weeks, take 2 weeks. It's like, life is, you cannot work hard like I work hard if there is no way to stop when it's not fun. So I go all out because I know when it stops being fun, I'm going to chill for a minute and then I'll be right back in it. It's only when people, like, you have to be really careful. So I have a lot of rules in my life. My rules are very hardcore, and I'm very disciplined about following those rules. But I'm also extraordinarily good at going, I want to take the day off today. Okay, am I doing that because I'm being lazy or because I've really left it out on the field and I just need a minute? Yeah, I just need a minute. And so I take it. And so because I've gotten good at that I can trust myself to know when it's, go or stop, I don't burn out. And then I've got a lot of rules around how to avoid burnout and all that stuff. I mean, that's maybe a different podcast, but
Come back.
what scares me is when people feel some sort of moral obligation to always grind, and they forget that you should only be grinding if, on balance, you're stoked about what you're grinding towards. Because if you're just blindly working yourself into oblivion, or you think it's cool to be busy, that's a recipe for disaster. So I have built my life such that 60% of it is awesome. And the 60% that's awesome warrants the 40% that sucks.
Mm. When did you begin to discover that you were getting better at giving yourself grace to then take a break if you felt like you might be on the cusp of a burnout, or, felt like you left everything out on the field?
That was probably in my early to mid 30s. I really hit my stride. I had developed
Mhm.
an insane amount of discipline by that point. I had proven to myself over and 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 over. I don't wuss out. Like when it's hard, I lean in and I do it, and that's that. And when you show up for yourself over and over and over, you start to know you can trust yourself. And you also, like, if you've built your life right and you believe in what you're pursuing, then it's like it's fun, and it
Yeah.
becomes a part of your identity. And so to
Mhm.
feel good, to feel the way I want to feel about myself, I want to play hard.
Mm.
And that's how it feels to me. It's like I just want to leave it all out on the field. I'm okay if I fail. Like if I
Yep.
the odds that I actually build the next Disney are virtually zero. And that doesn't matter to me because I have a
Mm.
reason why I'm doing it, and I really believe in that reason.
Mm.
And the showing up every day is fun even when I'm failing.
Mm.
So as long as that's true, then I'll keep at it.
Mm. I want to get back to something we mentioned earlier, which was mastering the mindset. Because everything you're saying, I keep thinking you got to have not only discipline, which by all means, everything you said, I would have asked you, how did you obtain discipline? But clearly, everything you've said kind of gave that to us. But when did you ever get to a point where you realized your mind controls everything and you had to get ahead of that and you had to start figuring out how that plays into your daily life? How did you do that? And then for those who might be struggling with it, especially right now during these times, who want to really control the mind as best they can. How's
Yeah,
where
for
are at?
me, that was the big breakthrough for me. In my early 20s, I was in a super dark place, as mentioned, and my only way out was reading about the brain. And so I
Mm,
started reading about the brain, and this is in the late 90s, and brain plasticity was hotly contested. Some people said, yep, you develop new neurons even as you age, you can learn anything at any age. And other people were like, nope, you're born with a certain number of neurons, and that's that. And you're
mm,
just making the best of the hand you were dealt. And I thought, I'm going to choose to believe, even if it's not true, I'm going
mm,
to choose to believe that brain plasticity is real. And I'm going to act as if I put energy into getting better, I will actually get better. And
mm.
that seemed to make sense. Like I couldn't think of
Yeah.
anything in my life. Weightlifting, yes, you get stronger. By that point, I was teaching filmmaking, and I was realizing, hey, that's interesting. I can help the students make their films better. If I could help them
Mm,
make their films better, could I get better myself? And so it was just like all these pieces started to come together. And so as I'm reading the brain science, I'm thinking, okay, I'm starting to understand how the mind works, and
mm,
how brain plasticity works at a cellular level. This process called myelination, neurons that fire together wire together, and that you can repeat something enough that it actually gets easier to think. That the
mm,
brain is this just calorically ravenous part of your body. It's 2.5 to 3 pounds by weight, and it takes up about 20% of your calories. So, I mean, it's just devastatingly hungry from a caloric standpoint.
yeah.
So it's like, all right, you've got this brain. It is doing all kinds of machinations to try to master its environment, to get good at something. And I want to make sure that I'm harnessing the power of that by putting myself in an
Mm,
optimal situation for that to grow. And so the more that I learned about the brain and all the things that it's doing, I just began to realize, man, we are brains in a vat. And there's a book by a guy named David Eagleman called Incognito.
yeah. The yellow
And
book,
you know
yellow.
him.
I have the paperback
Yes.
with the blue head.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and what he says in the book is, I want you to imagine this: light never touches your brain,
Yeah.
sound waves never reach your brain. Only thing that reaches your brain are electrical and chemical signals. And then your brain interprets those into what you think of as being out there. But he said it's actually all happening in your brain. And for some reason, that hit me like a lightning rod. And I was like, oh my God. Once I realized my brain is creating a VR experience with
Mm,
total disregard for what is real. Like, if you want to, there's a guy named Donald Hoffman. I've had him on the show twice now. And he says, look, evolution basically proves mathematically
mm,
that the only guarantee he can make about the world is not a single thing that you see is real because of this whole thing called fitness payoffs, probably beyond the scope of this. I'll give you the quick version. If you want more, just let me know. So his
We go ahead and
thesis,
give it. Quick version.
his thesis goes like this. You are rewarded by evolution for acquiring things that have a fitness payoff, whether that's an apple and taking as many bites of that apple as you can, whether it's eating calorically dense meat instead of just grazing on grass, whether it's cooking food instead of eating it raw because the nutrients are more available, finding a mate, anything that will help you find a mate. So anything that helps you do that, you're going to optimize for that. And he said, you can run the math on that. And what you'll see is because reality is actually like I'm looking over at a brown wall right now. What I'm actually seeing is math. And it's just the number of photons in a given spectrum that are reflecting off of that and hitting my eye. Now, your brain's like, I don't need to fuck with all that data. So I'm just going to say it's brown, right? And so it simplifies the world. So when you realize, oh my God, like I'm not seeing what is real. I'm seeing a facsimile that allows me to eat, mate, fight, flee, right? That's it. And so now it's like, okay, well, wait a second. If this isn't objective reality and it's subjective, then is it always subjective to my advantage? Or are there times where it's being subjective to my disadvantage? And if it's being subjective to my disadvantage, may I introduce you to the negative voice in your head? Are there things that I can do to disrupt that thing, take control of that process so that I can insert something that is advantageous? And so there's a guy named Viktor Frankl who was in multiple concentration camps, in fact, ends up coming out and writing a book. He was a neuroscientist. And he said, in between stimulus and response is a gap. And your life is about what you decide to do in that gap. And I thought, oh man, that is so true. So whatever it is, oh man, I'm never going to be able to do this. I'm too dumb to pull this off. Oh, that person, Elon Musk, is so much better than me. I'm never going to be an Elon Musk. Disney's so far ahead. They've got a literal 90-year head start. How am I ever going to catch up? I'm not capitalized like they are. And you realize, oh, okay, I'm a brain in a vat. That voice was designed to keep me safe. It does not present objective reality. So now I can choose to listen to it, or I can use it as a habit loop trigger, which is what I do. So whenever I have a negative voice, I use it as a habit loop trigger to remind myself that I can get good at anything at any time. That's just the nature of the average human. It's not me. I'm not special. It's just that's what humans do. So by understanding the nature of the brain, suddenly you start to see what the levers are that you can pull on. And doing that changed my life.
It didn't make you overwhelmed mentally at all?
Here's the thing. Here is your task with overwhelm. The next time you're feeling overwhelmed, I want you to say the following sentence. I don't get overwhelmed. But now I want you to say it like this. You're going to lower your chin. You're going to bring your eyebrows down. You're going to feel that intensity that makes you want to grit your teeth. And you're going to say, with no sense of joking or laughter, I don't get overwhelmed. Now, that's just called a pattern interrupt. Every time I do that, when I feel the fucking weight of all the shit I have to do, dude, there are times, as I'm sure you can imagine, where I've been in situations where I have hundreds of millions of dollars on the line, and you've got an hour to make that fucking decision. And all of a sudden you feel everything revving, oh God. And in those moments, if you give into the panic, it will sweep you away.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you put your chin down and you remind yourself, I don't get overwhelmed, you pattern interrupt, and then you remember, just take it one piece at a time. What do I need to do right now? What is this situation in its constituent parts? And can I look at one part and one part only? Figure out what to do here. Okay, cool. Got that. What's the next thing? And you take that. If you step back and you look at that whole thing and it gives you that sense of like runaway panic, then don't look at the whole thing. Break it down into these smaller parts. But it starts with reminding yourself, you control your mind. If you want to get overwhelmed, let yourself get overwhelmed. Tom does not do overwhelm. And because I go in and pattern interrupt, it stops the neurochemistry between stimulus and response as a gap. And then in that gap, I just put a reminder, break this down into small pieces. So no, I don't get overwhelmed.
But you do get creative when you meditate. Do I have that right? You have often said a lot of times, and because people meditate sometimes to get away from that overwhelmment or to just pause during the day, breathe, do breathing exercises. There's a lot of reasons. And I've found this even doing this show. People meditate for thousands of reasons. I meditate because I need to stop looking at a screen for 10 minutes, But when you meditate, why did you decide to start meditating after a while? And then what does it really help you do, especially when getting creative?
So, meditation is the single most useful way to avoid feeling overwhelmed, stressed, anxious. It is one of the biggest life-changing things I ever came across. And it
Mm,
came into my life at a time where my anxiety was getting debilitating. Now, as it turns out, that was largely associated with diet, but I didn't understand that at the time. So I didn't know how to fix it. And it was getting so bad that I couldn't talk to like 3 or 4 people in my family in a living room. Like it was just like I was out of breath and just like, oh my God.
yeah.
So that was so crazy. So finally I was like, okay, we need to do something new because this has become a problem. And it was generalized. So it wasn't like I didn't even know what I was anxious about. And I had avoided meditation because it seemed soft.
Mm.
And I finally met a Navy SEAL and he said, Tom, stop being a dumbass, go meditate. And the second I took my first diaphragmatic breath, I was like, oh my God, because it shifts you. It's what I call a physiological hook. Whether you want it to or not, breathing from your diaphragm will move you out of the sympathetic nervous system into the parasympathetic nervous system. And once I realized I could control that, that I could be in full blown fight or flight mode, and just by the way that I breathed, I could calm down. I could return the blood to my prefrontal cortex. I could begin thinking clearly again, um, and really relax and tap into, like you said, creativity. Uh, that was a life changer. And so
Mm.
there have been times in my life where I've thought, man, if I didn't have meditation right now, because that's where what I call background radiation, right? I'm not sure why I don't feel good. I don't feel right. Like
Yeah.
I'm antsy or I'm depressed
Yep.
or I'm anxious or whatever, and it just builds and builds and builds and builds and builds, and that's how people end up in overwhelm. But I have learned through the most ungodly stressful periods of my life that I'm never more than 45 minutes away from total equanimity.
Mm.
And there are times though where it takes me 45 minutes of just breathing calmly, trying to calm myself down.
Yep.
45 minutes, you got pretty worked up if it takes you 45 minutes to calm down.
Mm.
But the thought that the most stressful moments of my life, even then, I'm never more than 45 minutes from total peace.
Mm.
That is a safety blanket you can take with you anywhere.
Tom Bilyeu. Wow. It's interesting. When I thought to bring you on the show, I said, this man, if I just ask him questions about his life, it's gonna spiral into all these incredible other anecdotes because that's who you are. And it's who you've become, rather. I always tell people it's like the evolution of the personality and how I've watched, what is this, 6 years maybe, but I keep thinking to myself, anybody who is listening right now, every time Tom is to say something, it's almost like you can tell where his intentions lie. And so with that, my friend, my final question for you on this incredible hour, I couldn't have asked to spend the last hour with anybody else, especially on what is now 7 p.m. East Coast time. So listen, I'm telling you, I really wanted this hour with Tom Bilyeu. You often leave people with this lasting question of what impact they want to leave on the world, on society, on people, on communities. What is that for you? You've hinted at it, but if you had to give it in a power statement as to what impact you want to leave with people, what is that?
Oh, in no uncertain terms, I want to make sure that nobody reaches the age of 15 without encountering a growth mindset. I want to pull people out of the matrix at scale. And the only way to do that is to give them the ideas of a growth mindset through the limbic part of the brain, which is storytelling, which is why we're building the next Disney.
Tom Bilyeu, thank you for being today's man of the hour, for allowing us to coin that term to you, hand it over to you. We actually are building out crystal plaques. I can't wait to send you one, my friend. You can put it behind you. You can put it by your bed, wherever you want to put it. I want you to know that that term exists for guys like you who are in our society, really incredibly building not just community, but impact, and the fact that your show's impact theory. There you go, right? That's Tom Bilyeu for you guys. To anybody who's listening right now, thanks for being here. I appreciate you, your time, your energy, for listening to everything this man had to say. Like I say, might be the host of the show, but I just got to ask simple questions and then the guys take it from there. So if you want to find Tom Bilyeu anywhere else, his last name is Bilyeu, Tom Bilyeu, on all social platforms, and his company's Impact Theory. You can find that everywhere else. They just launched Impact University and so many other things like his comic books. He will create the next Disney. But for right now, we're going to head over to YouTube. We're going to close out the podcast right now with the outro. And we'll see you guys just later. And if you want to head to the YouTube channel, we're going to play a game of what we like to call questions of the hour. We ask all the deep stuff on the podcast, right? We always have these elongated questions in which I want to ask you, like, oh God, Tom, what was that one life, that one life moment, or what was that one time that was the hardship for you? But this is where we have a little bit more fun. Welcome to Questions of the Hour, Tom Bilyeu. I'm so excited to have you, my friend. Are you ready for 10 to 20 rapid fire questions? I'm going to say 10 to 20 so you don't think too much about it. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
What was the first thing you usually do when you get up in the morning?
Meditate.
When was the last time you drank alcohol?
Ooh, 6 weeks ago.
I wouldn't think you drink alcohol.
No, it's because that was Christmas time. So.
When I say red velvet, what comes to mind?
Cake.
What would you say is one of your weird quirks?
I obsessively ruminate on something once I get excited about it. However much people think I mean, multiply that by 100.
100. We called you the man of the hour on this very show, but if you had to think of one man of the hour you would coin in your life, who would that be and why?
Ooh. You know who's got the most interesting story I've ever come across, who really, really inspires me? My father-in-law took himself from a tiny village in the mountains of Cyprus, an island I had never heard of until I met his daughter, and ended up running one of the largest shipping companies in the world. Like, how do you pull that off? How? He rode a donkey. I'm not kidding. To get to the hospital, this man rode a donkey. It's crazy. His story is crazy. So I am trying to get him to write an autobiography because, oh my God. So yeah, I'll throw it to him.
Nice. There you go, father-in-law, man of the hour. Do you have any evening rituals? You wake up to meditate. Do you then do that again? Do you have any evening rituals to wind down?
Sort of. So I work until the minute that I go to bed. So the last thing I do every night is I'm reading. So by reading or preparing for a podcast. So I don't consider it a ritual, but that's how I end every day by necessity, if that makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense. If you could pick a theme song about your life, what would it be?
Oh God. Eye of the Tiger, or yeah, that's pretty good. I'm just gonna stick with that. It wouldn't be true if I had more time to think about it, almost certainly. I'll sneak a second answer in. The lyrics of this song don't work so well, but the way it makes me feel is perfect, and that's The Handler by Muse. That has got to be one of my all-time favorite songs. That shit gets me so hype you can't imagine.
If you could write a book tomorrow, right? Not 6 years from now, tomorrow, about your life, what would the title be and why?
The only book I'd ever be willing to write of a nonfiction nature is The Physics of Being Human. So it'd sort of be about my life. I'd use me as examples, but really it's just getting people to understand that average people can do extraordinary things because of the nature of the brain.
You built a snack bar, what a nutrition bar, really. What's your favorite snack outside of Quest nutrition bars?
I don't eat a lot of snacks. So, I do. Human makes these chocolate covered almonds.
Oh, wait, that's where it's at.
Those are freakish.
How do you usually celebrate a major win?
With my wife. I just want to be with my wife.
Oh, I love
Literally
that.
just hang with my wife.
Not even the dog? You're not going to bring the dog in?
My dog, both dogs will invite themselves. But if I'm honest, it is my wife is the draw.
I love that. Speaking of pets, what's your biggest pet peeve?
When people argue for their limitations.
Yeah. You're like me. You work out all the time. I remember you always saying you'd get up to work out. It's one of the first things you do in the morning, probably after you meditate. When you're going through the weeks, which, if you had to pick a day as to which one's the favorite day to work out, say leg day, chest day, arms, whatever, what's your favorite workout day?
Yeah, push. So chest, shoulders, tries for sure.
Yeah, same. Upper body. What's the last book you read?
I'm doing a challenge this year. So I'm reading 52 novels and 200 volumes of manga. And the last one that I finished was called The Three Body Problem.
Huh. I'll have to ask you about that later. Do you believe in ghosts or paranormal activity?
Absolutely not.
Same. After having done so many interviews, Tom, through Impact Theory or just even through Inside Quest, who's one person still on your wish list that you haven't yet booked?
Oh, Jordan Peterson.
Mm.
We've technically booked him, but he hasn't come on yet. I am beside myself. I'm very excited. And originally I had turned him down. I can't believe that's true, but it is. And now I didn't know who he was.
Yep.
Anyway, this is speed round, so I'll leave it at that. But we finally got him. I'm very excited.
What does having good energy mean to you?
Ooh, it means mitochondria health. So cellular energy, boys and girls, cellular energy. Get after it.
Get after it. Do you have a favorite interview from Impact Theory?
David Goggins.
Yeah. What would you say is your silver lining right now, especially through the times we're living in?
Oh man, I'm an introvert, so not having a bunch of people around me is magically delicious. So I'm alone
Yeah.
in my dream house with my dream girl.
I don't think it's gonna
honestly,
get better.
that's why it's like, look, this is not a period I will ever complain about.
Who's your favorite visual or performing artist and why?
Ooh, okay. The first thing that came to mind is Queensryche. I don't know if
Yeah.
you call them a visual performing artist, but they're very theatrical in nature. And because they changed my life. So as a kid, I didn't have big thoughts as a kid. And it wasn't until Queensryche where they made me think about the world and politics and the way things were. And I listened to their tape until it broke. Operation Mindcrime. Anybody, if there are any fans out there, I wanted to get them on the show so badly, but they hate each other. And so apparently that's never going to happen.
One at a time.
Very sad. Very sad about that.
Final question for you, Tom, for the questions of the hour. What do you think about the interview we just had together on the Men of the Hour podcast?
Did a great job, man. I know how much prep goes into making this seem seamless. So mad kudos to you. You're very prepared, which I don't know if the people watching your show know about. You send over a run a show, like you're not for play. And so
that was just for you.
Recognized game.
Recognized game. Thank you for playing this game. Questions of the Hour with Tom Bilyeu. He just had his episode drop at the Men of the Hour podcast. He's everywhere at Tom Bilyeu and at Impact Theory. Be sure to check that out as well. Tom Bilyeu, we will see you in just a moment, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.